Only 0.1% of Bitcoin adoption, and a single company is still worth 3 times as much as all of the Bitcoin in the world. This shows you how freaking early we actually are in the Bitcoin ecosystem. So today I'm talking with Arv, one of the deepest thinkers in Bitcoin, how Bitcoin is being adopted, why he thinks the next 10 years could potentially be the most explosive in Bitcoin, and what we are about to see. And additionally, we talk about taxes, we talk about AI, we talk about so many more topics. So with that being said, enjoy. If you have to put it in a big frame, like how would you say is Bitcoin changing the world order after studying the history of economics, evolutionary biology, and all of those things?
So I would say that it is very early stages of what I will call, and I'm sure someone else has called it this, or more broadly, digital Darwinism. So the thing, if I sort of take a step back, there are two real forms of evolution that occur within our species. There's the biological evolution, which is our genes evolving through time, depending on our environment. That environment creates a stimulus that forces our biology to either change or adapt to the situation that we find ourselves in. Now, biological evolution is slow. Um, Slow in that it takes minimum tens of thousands of years really to see significant changes into it. And our biology has evolved over millions of years. And so when you look at it from that time scale, our lives on this planet, hopefully being 100 years or so, is like a grain of sand on a near on infinite beach of um, of time. And when you think about it in the lens of evolutionary biology, like that's going to take forever. We're not going to see that. But what has evolved is cultural evolution. And so where biology has been too slow, we've allowed culture to take over. Now, when I say culture, I think anything that's created through the human, um, call it cerebral cortex, uh, the cognitive element that we evolved to do that makes us as smart and intelligent of a species that we are. And that encompasses all our technologies that we've created. I would class that, and I think other researchers in this space have classed that as part of a cultural evolution. Same with how we come up with our laws. At the end of the day, the laws that govern our country is stuff that we just made up in our minds that everyone believes is the case, and we all vote on it. But ultimately, it's a fiction that we create. Same with our monetary systems. Why do we believe that a piece of gold or a Bitcoin, which is backed by energy that is secured via a decentralized ledger and a protocol ultimately created by an individual or group of individuals, why do people believe that's value? Again, it's technically a fiction that we've created that we all believe has value that allows us to do the things that we do. And so I would call this cultural evolution. And so where biological evolution can't keep up, cultural then takes over to keep our species advancing and adapting. What I see with Bitcoin is we've seen monetary changes over time. So now let's just zoom in on that cultural evolution down to the monetary layer, where we've used precious metals, we've used shells, yap stones, we've used orchids, we've used cattle in the early days. Then we went to coinage. Then we realized, oh my God, Roman Empire, they're clipping the coins, degrading the amount of value there. So they were debasing their currency in a way. That collapsed. Then we went back to a hard standard again. Then we've gone through fiat standards in China in the past. That's collapsed. Then we've tried it again. And so we see these sort of cycles of ups and downs of where we all have a collective shared view that this thing could work, ultimately hits the human condition in a way that causes it to go haywire and then collapse. Now let's bring the story to where Bitcoin is. Bitcoin in itself was an evolution. If you've ever read the book, the Genesis book by Aaron von Wirdum, he, and I think I've pronounced his name correctly, he went through the history of the cypherpunks, starting from the 70s all the way through the genesis of Bitcoin. The amount of failures that led to the point of Bitcoin, solutions that were implemented that ultimately failed that led to Bitcoin, was in itself sort of an adaptation. It went through that gauntlet of trying and failing until it landed onto a stable, call it strategy. That is Bitcoin. And Bitcoin is the antithesis of understanding both digitally how to create money for the digital age, which did not exist really before the 70s. Sure, we had communications, but really the internet was only just being born in the 70s and the 80s through DARPA and then mainstream into the 90s. And so it is this evolution of technological advancement in the monetary space through to 2008 when it was deployed. And we're only now just starting to see, does this thing actually work? And if a Bitcoiner says 100% it's going to work, I don't think they've been creative enough to realize all the potential vulnerabilities that it will have. And we're being too bullish, too blind to what could possibly be, that we don't find our blind spots and then correct for them. So I'm always on the bit more on the pessimistic side and try to say, well, where are we at? Super, super, super early. But I think that it is the best thing that we've created thus far, and thus it needs to go through the gauntlet of adoption to see whether it can actually tackle the root problem. And now the root problem from a historical lens has been that people have corrupted the tools that we've used, whether it be Roman emperors debasing their coinage that have robbed from their citizens. And what we're seeing now with the fiat monetary system, with central banks printing to allow for deficit spending that benefit the few, not the many. Again, those are individuals that are corrupting it. Bitcoin is the first application of putting in place digital guardrails against those human behaviors that have led previous monies to collapse. So if you frame it from that lens, we are now only just starting to see, can it survive that gauntlet of human behavior? And we are still way too early to know it. Like what under 2 trillion as a market cap.
Yeah, it's so interesting
That's
because
nothing.
it's like nothing. And I think, I mean, it's a whole nother topic, because like people come into Bitcoin, they think like, oh, 100K, 70K, 120K, whatever the price is when you watch that episode, you think that is a lot of money, because like sounds so huge as a unit. And you compare it to like, oh, my Apple stock is just, I don't even know what the Apple stock is trading, but like probably like $100 or something like that. Apple stock just like $300. So $308 is currently the Apple stock. So you're like, you look at that, you're like, okay, one Apple stock is $308. One Bitcoin stock
Yeah.
is 70,000, 80,000, whatever the price is. That's a lot more money than the Apple stock, but you don't realize that Apple is actually bigger than Bitcoin, because
Correct.
it's not about the unit, it's about the whole thing. Because you
How much
can,
value is that asset class, or not asset class? How much is that total asset actually holding in terms of value is what you actually care about. And we're at 1
yeah,
point something
it's like
trillion.
I can tell you, y- I'll charge you $5 per pizza piece. Then your question is like, how large is that pizza
Pizza.
piece? Like how much of the whole pizza? Like if the pizza is like, and how large is it? Like is it like
Yeah.
a few inches? Is it like a big? Like, is it 1 meter? Like a very big pizza? So it's like,
Yeah.
it's very, people are so stupid when it comes to unit bias, and it
Yep.
was myself also, and it still is. I have like this crazy thing of like, if I see a stock at like $16, my head is like, wow, that's so cheap. And I'm like, gosh, Robin, like you like, why don't you look at the market cap? It's such a,
Yeah. Yep.
like, exchanges should be required to not look at the unit, but should be required to show the market cap as the first thing.
Yep.
And like how much of percentage, like how much of that market cap do you want to buy, and not like a unit, because like unit is so weird. There's like reverse
Yep.
stock splits and like, oh, and so
It's almost like
sorry, that was a
marketing
tangent,
gimmick
but yeah.
to trick your mind into miscalculating what it actually is. And so if you put $100 versus $16, oh, $16 is cheap, let's go and get that. But the $100 is actually the more fundamentally sound company that's actually going to generate returns and thus increase in value over time. And so again, it's a marketing not marketing gimmick, but it's sort of playing on the mind, given how we perceive the world on a much smaller scale versus
It,
stepping back and looking at the bigger picture and realizing, oh, okay, I needed to take all this other context into account when making this decision.
I was a Tesla investor before Bitcoin, and there was this huge event coming up that Tesla was stock splitting. I think like 1 to 5, something like for 5 to 1.
Yeah.
I think 5 to 1 is the thing. Um, and I was like, why is that an event? Like, why are people looking forward to that? Because it will give more people an incentive to get into the stock, even though nothing has changed. Like a
Nothing has
stock
changed.
split is really no change whatsoever.
It's just that the minimum buy price is now dropped significantly. If it's a 5-to-1 stock split and it was trading at $300, you can now buy a share at $60, which means that smaller and time investors can get in on the action that didn't have $300 to in one hit buy a single share.
But even now, there are so many modern exchanges where you can already buy
Yeah,
a fraction
correct.
of a share.
Yeah,
But even if this wouldn't be the case, I would even argue against that, because how much, like, if an investor does not have enough money to buy a stock at $800, how much does his buy into the stock really matter for the stock? You know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah.
Is there it's yeah, but yeah. So like the stock splitting, it's like I actually like. I think Berkshire Hathaway, they never had a stock split. Like it was like I don't know if that's like true, but like they have a ridiculous high stock price of like
Yeah,
I
it's
don't
like
know.
in the
Henry tells me.
thousands. Yeah. It's huge. But then you could liken that to breaking a Bitcoin into 100 million sats. Like, why do you have to break it up that much? Why not just hold it one Bitcoin and then it changes the buy price? So it's like I could understand it, especially if you're like what Bitcoin does, which is enable banking and monetary sovereignty to billions of people in underserved areas. We would love them to all have access to it and even put in a singular US dollar to buy some sats because for them, that's huge. And if I'm a disgruntled, marginalized youth of today that is on the back end of this fiat monetary explosion, maybe getting in smaller into some of these companies and starting to invest into the technologies that are going to advance our civilization, which I think Elon is doing with, like, I'm looking forward to looking at the SpaceX IPO and seeing where that one lands. But to get a piece of that, knowing what it's going to do for civilization as a young person, I'd say that's brilliant. Let's write it up. But if it was outside of my 100, if I had $500 to put aside and a share was $600, and now I have to keep waiting to even get in, kind of demoralizing. So I could see why you would want to reduce it, especially where the reason why these prices are so high is because of the amount of fiat money that's been printed into the system. And so it wouldn't be this high if it wasn't that. And all the value is centralized to the top. And so actually, by stock splitting, you're democratizing access to the stock, which is going to help you outperform fiat. So if you don't want to invest into Bitcoin, then I'd rather people have as many options to invest and beat inflation through productive companies like a SpaceX, like a Tesla, um, if Bitcoin isn't the thing that you want to do.
Yeah, it's a good one, because at least you have a lot of options.
Yeah.
That's what also for me, it's also the freedom part is the thing that Bitcoin is giving us in the meantime, because the number go up part you already had before. Like you could
Yep.
already buy Nvidia and all of those things. That the difference is you really have to be on your A game to understand all those different stocks, and they have a little bit of a shorter life than Bitcoin. So you have to find like what's your exit strategy out of those stocks with most of the stocks, because the top 5 market cap company today look very different from 30 years ago, look very different to
Yeah.
another 30
100%.
years ago. And Bitcoin is like a little bit more stable than that. But yeah, it's a complicated world out there.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And yeah, and like, look, Bitcoin is complicated, but I think the problem that it's solving is more complicated than people give it credit for. And so because of that, we're sort of underestimating how complicated the problem that we're actually solving will actually become. And I use the complicated piece because I'm trying to simplify a complex problem so that the masses understand the thing that we're actually trying to battle against. That by opting into the Bitcoin network and the Bitcoin, what I call ethos, um, you're opting into something bigger than just money and monetary value itself. Because I still believe that that adage that we hear in Bitcoin being fix the money, fix the world, I don't agree with that. I think it stops short of what the problem actually is. It's fix the money and then you can fix the world. Because I still see that if you hold Bitcoin and you hodl through and you stop larger entities from hodling large stacks of Bitcoin, you're stopping their center of gravity from exerting force on the world around us. The more Bitcoin that you have, the more capital that you have, the more ability that you have to influence the immediate surroundings around you. And so you can think about that from the lens of political. If you've got a lot of capital that you can deploy, you can change political races, who gets elected, and therefore, by who gets elected, what laws are enacted, and by what laws are enacted, ultimately giving you potentially upside. Bitcoin helps fix that to a degree, but it does not actually do the fixing of those systems themselves. And so the complex part of the problem that I think that Bitcoiners are looking to solve, and I think we've got the fundamental principles in Bitcoin itself that just need to be scaled beyond Bitcoin, is that money is just the first step. If you don't then fix how politics is done today and start think tanks that look to reimagine the way in which politics in the digital age is being conducted, because just in the same way that fiat was built for the call it the physical world, Bitcoin was built for the digital world and where civilization is moving towards technologically today. Politics has not caught up to that. Education has not caught up to that. Healthcare has not caught up to that. And so there are a lot of structures within our civilization that are yet to go through that transformation that Bitcoin, I think, is first mover on. But learnings from this adoption journey, how we combat the few that would look to pervert the system to their benefit, Bitcoin will be the gauntlet that tests whether or not this is a viable solution. And I actually don't know 100% that it will pass that gauntlet. In many ways, where people previously thought that their fiat currencies, that their coinage could do it and failed, Bitcoin could potentially go through that. And we just maybe haven't imagined a scenario where that could occur just yet. But if it does pass this gauntlet, then we have to take all those learnings and now start to apply and advance everything that surrounds it. Because the problem will be Saylor's got almost, or probably already has 4% of the supply in MicroStrategy. What happens when Saylor goes? What happens when Fong Li goes? Who's in control of that corporate treasury? It's some sort of individual that we hope that that company is going to appoint that lives up to the values and the ethos that those two individuals have carried that have allowed them to stack 4% of the supply. BlackRock is probably going to have 4 or 5% of the supply. Nations are going to have multiple percentage points of the supply. At that point, it's individuals in control of Bitcoin that'll be able to use it to exert influence where they deem necessary. And if they can apply it to the political spheres, that then means that all the regulation, the laws that are passed that um, determine police, borders, healthcare, education of our youth, the values, the principles, and what they are taught to believe will be under that level of control. And unlike fiat, where they just kept on printing and it just sort of, yes, it funneled to the top, but they kept on printing it. You now got a finite supply. Every sat is worth a hell of a lot more than every printed dollar, every printed fiat. And so if they have that control of that supply, they create that sort of center of gravity around themselves, they'll be able to exert that influence, and then they can exert pressure into the physical world. So if we stop at money, we're kind of screwed in my view. We have to extend all of these principles and these learnings to redesigning and rethinking all the other systems for which the people that are already taking advantage of fiat are likely to continue to take advantage of.
Is there a danger that strategy specifically becomes the new Bank of England, the new central bank, the new Fed, the new whatever you want to choose in that
Yep.
realm? Is that
Of course
that
it
kind
is.
of what you're going in?
Yep, absolutely. It's just about what time horizon you're looking at. Do I think that's going to happen in the next 5, 10, 15 years? Probably not. But Bitcoin, if we choose to think of it in that time horizon, that's a very short time horizon. Reality, the last block is what, mined out in 2140? I can't remember the exact date where the last block with block reward is mined. That's 100 and something years from now. Like when you think about just what has changed in the last 100 years from 1926 to now, we hadn't even gone through World War II yet. So we're talking about a time period for where it was post World War One. The battle between Hayek and Keynes had just started effectively for the dominant economic thought. We hadn't seen the internet. We'd barely seen an automobile. We hadn't seen the atomic bomb. We hadn't launched into space. There's a lot that can occur over 100 years. And so it's just a failure of imagination to not think that over a long enough time period, and I think it's probably 30 to 40 years, that concentration like that within a publicly listed entity under the jurisdiction of the United States of America won't be prone to something. Because in 40 years, I don't think Saylor is going to be around unless medical technology catches up. Hopefully he is, but like he's getting to the point where that's a real possibility. He's not going to be there, and there will be new leadership. What does that leadership need to do? There's going to be a new geopolitical environment which they'll be operating in. The US is going to be in a very different place in terms of where its standing as a global superpower is. What are the likely changes as a result of all the things that we cannot foresee going to be on the policies of the government that largely control the public entities and where they are housed? I don't know. But the fact that it's concentrated to that degree is a good chance that it will turn into something that it was never intended to turn into, like many things that we observe. And I've got a very controversial take. Keynes came from good intentions, but it was perverted through time in order to become what we now see with modern monetary theory. But back in 1919 or 1920, he wrote a piece called The Economic Consequences of the Peace. And he was battling against the amount of sanctions and reparations that were placed post World War One on the losers. Germany was as part of that. And Hayek was inspired by that piece because they shared the same view. Hayek and Keynes started off as in commonalities against the thing that they were battling, solutions slightly different, but both were capitalists. But if I asked a Bitcoiner today, do you think Keynes was a capitalist? What do you think the average answer would be?
No matter if you already have self-custody or still have your Bitcoin on exchange, your generational wealth that you have in Bitcoin could be completely at risk. And that's why I highly recommend to you to give the Bitcoin Way a 30-minute free consultation call to check how secure your custody setup really is and what you can still improve. So head over to thebitcoinway.com/Robin. Again, that's the bitcoinway.com/Robin and get your free initial 30-minute call with the Bitcoin Way. Finally, we have BTC Prague back in 2026, and this year I'm not only speaking on a panel, but I'm actually going to present an interesting new angle, a perspective, a Bitcoin thesis at BTC Prague this year for the first time ever. I've never done that on any other conference months. So this will be a fun one. If you listen to this show on a regular basis, I would love to meet you in Prague this year. It's very high signal, no noise. And Prague is just a freaking amazing city with awesome drinks and a lot of good food. Use code Robin to get 10% off. And if you buy with Bitcoin, you get an additional 5% off your ticket price. I'll see you there in Prague. Make sure to come say hi. I think the average answer of normal people, they have no clue who Keynes is.
Yeah. Well, if you talk to a Bitcoiner that had that view on Keynesian economics,
most probably wouldn't guess that, and it's new information for me. Like that he is that he started from that point is really interesting.
Yep. So actually, hold a second, I'll show you a book. So this was part of my reading list for my research, and there you go. Oh, damn it. There you go. Keynes Hayek. I'll shoot you a note, and I'll probably put in the comments underneath this. But Nicholas Wapshott wrote a book called Keynes Hayek: The Clash That Defined Modern Economics, and in it goes through how Keynes in 1919, with the consequences of the peace, inspired Hayek, and then went down diverging paths. Hayek from Austria, obviously the Austrian School of Economics, studied under von Mises. Keynes out of Cambridge. And it wasn't until Hayek was recruited to the London School of Economics that their battle really ensued, where because of the economic consequences of the peace, that is post-war reparations, Keynes had a view that actually governments could step in to soften the blows of downturns that we saw post-world wars, to soften the impact that led to devastation across the world. Post-war, people were in depressions, and he saw that in order to offset the damage to life, governments could intervene with stimulus, but the moment that that stimulus had served its purpose was to pull out and let the free market then take over. So he saw government as acting as like a cushioning on those kind of events. Hayek disagreed and said, actually, you just need to let it play out. But at the time, they didn't know any better, and it was a battle of ideas. What that's now morphed into was something that was born out of suffering and trying to heal and minimize suffering in the world, which is what Keynes came from, if this book is accurate, which I think it is. And it's been perverted now into actually we'll just print money and stimulate whenever there's even the slightest, tiniest shock. One was built out of a wartime effort. One now is perverted into, oh no, we've got a slight downturn in economic growth. We better print money and stimulate the crap out of everything. And so when you actually look at that, they came from very similar foundations. And so now let's apply that story to MicroStrategy. It's come from a great place. It's creating stability in our market today with Bitcoin. It's absorbing a lot of the shocks more than likely. The buying from strategy alone is so stupidly high that it's not tanking the price. It's softening. It's maturing this asset class that's giving it more credibility on the global stage. So on an adoption front, I think what strategy doing today is phenomenal. But now fast forward, similar to Keynes, good intentions, what could it become? And that is anyone's imagination. And if in a 40 to 50 year time frame, if it's true that they don't sell, and who knows what changes over time, what happens if the CAGR of Bitcoin starts to collapse and it's no longer growing at the 39% to 40% that Saylor is expecting, and allowing for, is it stretch? What's the 11% perpetual
That's
instrument
stretch,
that he gives?
SDSC 11.5.
Yep. That's good for a couple of years, but then that'll probably start to reduce. Will the CAGR start to reduce? What is the economics of it then? What are they going to pivot to in terms of an operating business that's then going to support the cash flows for people wanting to invest into them as a stock at whatever multiple it will be into the future? And if they become operating, what are those operations? Will those operations, like what would do with their Bitcoin treasury? Do they become a reserve bank effectively? Are they even allowed to? Will the government step in at that point because they are now exerting forces that should be in the public good, not into a private company under public shareholder interests? So you've got a whole bunch of things that you just don't know what it's going to look like. And so to your mate's point that didn't think that Bitcoin would be a medium of exchange or a money, maybe that's the thing. And maybe it just becomes a permanent reserve asset that allows for value to be exchanged, but countries still exert their sovereign rights by holding the fiat, and will issue the fiat. And then it'll become a battle of whose fiat is better, whose provides enough stability that allows it to remain a functional currency, but enough flexibility that maybe Bitcoin won't allow per se for governments to execute against the public demand on them. And each country is going to be different. You're going to have a collectivist society that you see out of China and to a degree India, and you're going to have individualistic societies out of Europe, the US, Australia, New Zealand, Canada. And how they will use Bitcoin is going to be very different. But maybe it's always a reserve asset. And so you just don't know what path that's going to take. And so anyone that talks with any level of certainty that says, yeah, it's the best thing ever, Saylor's the best, hasn't thought long enough. And until the thing that'll give me confidence will be, what is Saylor's exit strategy for himself out of that business? What does that look like? Because is there a succession plan? I know Fong Lee as CEO's in there, but I don't know what the next line of succession is. Who's going to be the next executive chairman, which Saylor is at the moment? What policies are you going to put in place? Can they be voted out easily? You know, what safeguards are going to be in place in 30, 40, 50 years? If you are truly the bastion of Bitcoin. And so we may be sacrificing the long term through the propping up of strategy today because of the short term benefit it's providing us in the Bitcoin community today. They accumulate a lot. Maybe it bolsters all of our bags, price go up, softens the volatility on the downside. Great benefit. But long term, we may be sacrificing something that we just don't know yet.
I mean, do you think people buy strategy because of that? I feel like people buy strategy because they want to outperform Bitcoin and not because they care about Bitcoin. I think they care about themselves and their bags and not about the collective Bitcoin community.
Oh, 100% I agree. And it's just the free market playing itself out. So this was probably always going to play out. That someone was going to realize they found an arbitrage in the market, which Saylor did. He was able to buy Bitcoin at 0% on all of his borrowings. He's now found an arbitrage on creating this perpetual product that allows him to give out effectively a monthly dividend that outperforms a money market fund, while keeping that upside. But he's just managing the fact that some years are down years, some years are up years, but on average over a long enough period of time, it's got a CAGR of 39%. So me paying out 11%, I've got a 20 something percent arbitrage. Happy days. That's accretive to his company. So I don't disagree that it would have always happened. But what I'm saying is that free market at play to do this sort of thing under public company structures that are headquartered out of the US and governed by laws, what does that do long term? I have no idea. And so these are sort of the unknowns that we now need to start, not that we need to start thinking about, but we need to be open to realize that we're not creating our own blind spots. And so multiple treasury companies actually like that idea. And I'd like them all to get to Saylor size, or I'd like to see Saylor downplay it, become an operating business and diversify and de-risk across more. So decentralized treasury companies means that it's not across multiple jurisdictions. So you'd need to get geographical and legal system diversification across them. Otherwise, you're all centralized.
I mean, the USA holds a lot of the gold of the world, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know the exact percentage, but did I hear somewhere 20 or 25% or something like I just heard that
they're about to do an audit on Fort Knox, if you believe what Trump was saying as well. I know the
but I
French
hear
have got
that
a whole
since a
bunch of
long
gold.
time.
Yeah. But again, it comes down to then the shared fiction of the time. So Yuval Noah Harari in his book Sapiens, I think, articulates this thesis incredibly well. Gold as holding value is a complete fiction. It's what we created in our minds to believe that it is value. And one of the things that I hate about the way that we talk about value is that we think it's objective. Value is 100% subjective. There is no objective value. There are objective or intrinsic properties that things have, but it is we who assign value to it. So gold, people will say, oh, it's used in technology. Okay, great. It's used in technology for today, but who knows what technology will be in the future, and will it use gold as a conductor? I don't know. So in the future, it may not hold that value, but still maintains all of its current physical properties. Then they'll say, oh, it's used for jewelry. Okay, great. For as long as people wear gold jewelry. In India, awesome. Culturally, in India, gold jewelry, synonymous. People all saw value in it. I don't think they do it in Australia. So again, that's a cultural thing, which is a collective myth that has been created and believed by the masses that have assigned that value to that particular element of gold's market cap. So I always say, when people ask me this, it's like stuff has intrinsic properties. So stuff that we can objectively measure from multiple perspectives and all come to the same result, that's an intrinsic property. But if you cannot come to the same valuation of what that thing is valued, then it is by nature subjective. And when you realize that everything is value is all subjective and based on that shared belief, what if we, in 50 years, we are so technologically advanced, we are now a multi-planetary species. Elon's does his thing. He's got a base on the moon. They've perfected asteroid mining, which allows them to mine and literally just hurl it back down to Earth to reduce the cost. I think they're exploring, how do you mine an asteroid? And instead of coming in for a soft landing, you literally just fling it into the atmosphere and let it impact and then go and grab everything. That way it's super, super cheap, and cheaper gold mining on an asteroid than it is terrestrially on Earth. What does that then do to it? You've just jacked up the supply, and we all know supply-demand economics. So suddenly the value starts to plummet. And will we as a species believe that that is valuable when we've got a colony on Mars, a base on the moon? I think we look at the world through the lens which we've been brought up with, which makes a lot of sense. Why education is so important. The first 25 years largely sets in place all of your moral, all of your cognitive foundations. Your prefrontal cortex goes into full overdrive, like fully developed by mid-20s. And then by that point, a lot of it is sort of muscle memory. It is drawing subconsciously from all the collective experiences that you've encountered. And so we view the world through that. And right now we're viewing the world through gold is so important, and the US has a lot of the gold. Okay, but for how long is that going to be valuable? How long is that going to be the thing that props them up? China's buying a lot of gold. France has got a lot of gold. India's got some gold. Okay, great. The next wave is Bitcoin. And then Bitcoin will be that thing that gold is today. And that's what I hope, that it becomes that reserve asset for the digital age that allows it to be transferred everywhere. Be transferred to the moon. It can be transferred to Mars. It's just a communication, and to make sure that any node running on each of those planets is, and I guess that there's obviously time lag, and we'll solve for that in the Bitcoin community somehow between interplanetary use of it. But like, this is a very fictitious example. Who knows if that's even possible? But you could see that that's going to be a far better solution for value transfer than gold will be. And so maybe it just usurps it, and then all the gold becomes back to its utility value, which is, can I use that gold in all of my technology? So I'm actually just going to sell it to the private sector to use in creating electronics technologies, things that we need gold for.
It shows how early we are. We have a asset that is, I don't know, $1.5 trillion in market cap, is like
Baby.
0.1% of the total money in the world, if you think about the Jesse Meyer model.
Yep.
And we are thinking already how we can not only make Bitcoin the dominant form of reserve asset, money, whatever you want to call it, or whatever you believe it will become, but we also think about how we can transfer that already to other planets and make it there also the most dominant form of. So there's a lot of ground to cover for Bitcoin for those who are early and think we are at the top.
But it can happen quickly. And I think at the very start, I was talking about, 100-year period, 1920 to now, what's happened. But the trend is it's accelerating in terms of how rapid the change can occur. What Elon does with his company is just shows how quickly things can move if they need to, if people want them to move that quickly. And so to certain people in the space that will say, yeah, Bitcoin to a million, it's just one God candle away and we're there to $1 million. That's what Samson Mao. Absolutely possible. There could be an event that causes that to occur. It could be slow, but my guess is it'll actually happen faster than what I've been describing it to be will happen. We're 15 years in. The next 5 to 10 years, I think, are going to be explosive because we're now past on the adoption curve. We're past the early adopters now. It's now going into the early majority. And in that early majority, it's sort of like an S curve that starts, not an S curve, but a bell curve that starts to rapidly accelerate to get to a 50% population adoption. If you look at that bell curve model of technology adoption, and we're into that early majority phase now. Corporations are already adopting it. Nation states have already got some on the balance sheets. So we're in that accelerated phase now. We're getting clarity on the regulation front. So I think things will accelerate very, very, very quickly. But the problems that will rear their head will start to come as we start to go into the late majority, where more than 50% of the population are using it. And now suddenly we start to try to exploit it even more and even more and even more. And how that gets done in this combination of both the physical and the digital, I have no idea. How do laws, how do nations interact with it while maintaining their sovereign self-interest as a country when you've got Bitcoin, which is apolitical?
And that's the interesting question, like, because if you think about any technology, they are always adapted in different speeds, in different ways, in different countries. Like the internet, electricity, everything, cars, whatever technology you can think of, they have been adopted with different speeds in different jurisdictions and in completely different ways. The the uh, the phone line era that was popular in Germany, in Austria, I don't know, in America probably also, didn't even make it to parts of Africa. They directly switched
Yeah.
to cell phones.
Yeah.
There are parts in the world where there is no electricity. And if you don't have electricity, like in Melbourne or in Austria or like wherever you are, you
You'll
freak out
riot.
after just a few hours.
Yep.
And so it's
Completely
like,
agree.
it will be really interesting how different nation will adopt Bitcoin. China versus USA, Europe versus Africa. Like there's so many different. We always talk about like, oh, Bitcoin is going to be adopted like that, and I'm like, yeah, that might be true in one specific area in the world, in one specific situation, but it might be something like a 18-year-old Nigerian in Africa looks very different in Bitcoin than like a 72 Austrian retiree. Like they have like very, very different sets of problems, very different set of situations, and they're adopting Bitcoin in very different ways.
Correct. And, we push back against central bank digital currencies in a big way for good reason. But now picture Bitcoin as a fictitious example. I hope that it doesn't occur, and I don't think the likelihood is overly high. But what if Bitcoin has has its MySpace moment? In a similar way that Africa didn't take on fixed connectivity and went straight to mobile, so they just completely bypassed a form of technology and went straight to the next thing. What if there is a Bitcoin MySpace to the new Facebook moment, similar to what Instagram was going to do to Facebook, similar to what TikTok was going to do to Instagram? We see technology advance, and actually, the best technology will always win out. Right now, yes, we're early adopters, but we haven't really tested through the gauntlet of Bitcoin through this digital, physical um, coexistence in a real way. Because right now it is a 1.5, $1.6 trillion asset class. To your point, 0.1% of the money. It's two-fifths of nothing in relation to the rest of the world. And so the world is like, okay, yeah, Wall Street's getting involved. They probably think they can make quite a bit of money. Early adopter. It's their like 1% bet because they're banked on the rest of the value that they already got under management to power the majority of their returns. What happens when it does start to take off? Will there be something else that is able to perfect what Bitcoin is a little better? Like what eCash was trying to do in the 90s, that Bitcoin perfected in the mid to late 2000s. Could there be something that we've just not considered on all of these interactions that says that for collectivist countries, for Southeast Asia, for China, for Europe, there could be something better?
I mean,
I don't know. Maybe not.
With Microseed, you can engrave your 12 or 24 word seed phrase, the entire seed phrase, onto a 1-inch small washer. Yes, just one washer. All 24 words on that one washer. You can hide that thing everywhere. And even better, you don't need to buy a new kit every time you have to get a new wallet. You can make unlimited backups because Microseed is not selling the washer. Microseed is selling the device that stamps the washer. So you get the full kit with the device, with the washers, with the hammer, with everything you need to get started today. And you can make with that unlimited amount of backups. Go now to microseed.io. I finally and officially mine Bitcoin. This is not just something to stack more Satoshis, but it's most importantly also to support the network. Individual miners are the ones that keep the Bitcoin network decentralized. And by the way, you get KYC free Bitcoin. That's why I use Simple Mining. I get an actual proper Bitcoin miner. They set it up for me. They repair it if it breaks down. And most importantly, they let me choose the pool and even connect my own full node. I'm completely sovereign and I'm completely in control. And I can sign up with Ocean, no account needed. I just give them a Bitcoin address and then there's mining going on. No KYC, nothing. So if you're ready to mine Bitcoin, go to simplemining.io, tell them you come from Robin, and let's mine Bitcoin together.
Because Bitcoiners are like very certain in the way we speak. Bitcoiners, like I count myself in the camp, I guess, very much so. I mean, of course, like the normal way of how I usually approach like the Facebook, MySpace thing is like the difference between the protocol layer and the product layer. It's Bitcoin is not Facebook. Bitcoin is kind of like the TCP/IP protocol, more like that. But there can be an upgrade or a different protocol as well. But it's an interesting question because like we could look at all the protocol adoptions in the world in the past whatever years, and how they have been adopted and how they have been abandoned again. For example, I think the English language is a protocol, a very strong one. Communication protocol. And so it's like, this is kind of expanding because in Europe, we have the situation where nobody has the native English language, I mean, except UK, but we all speak English to each other because we all have our own little language. And because German
and it could have been French.
It could have been French, it could have been German. Yeah.
Yep. And it was just one won out over the others. And thus it became homogenous around the world. To the point that Bitcoin is early, it is absolutely early. We're not at mass global adoption yet. And so there is no reason why when this starts to play out and people realize actually the game is up, which the US will realize with the US dollar. They're trying to do something now with stable coins in order to, what people will pontificate as saying, to suck up treasuries, to allow them to continue printing money with a buyer there to buy their T-bills, and that is the stablecoin market for USDT, USDC. There could be something similar to that, where other countries now start to realize, oh, this is encroaching on something that we don't want it to. It used to be a great asset. It used to be this little thing that we didn't really care about. We banned it. We did some stuff like China did. But now it's actually a serious problem. We're going to need to take it seriously. And now we need to create something or do something about this that acts in our best interest and not against our interests. So I don't
I
know if we've seen the tipping point yet of whether that we've hit that point of pain that causes interested parties to start thinking differently to then create something different. Or maybe we will hit a black swan event into Bitcoin. Maybe it's not the block size wars, but another black swan type event as a result of the way in which it's being used that we just didn't anticipate. And we go through a make or break situation and it creates a new thing that has tackled that in a similar way that Facebook realized what MySpace was doing was just all over the place on the product level if we use your analogy and create another product. But maybe the product is the protocol itself. And maybe there are fundamental elements of the protocol that are tackling certain problems that we haven't properly identified. And so if we don't know the problem that we're trying to solve, how can we iterate toward the right outcome? If we're thinking that it's just purely a monetary thing, and if my thesis holds up and it's actually a human behavior thing, have we considered all of the different ways in which human behavior could exert its influence on the protocol, or at least exert itself on the use of Bitcoin itself? But if we haven't diagnosed it and understood it, then how can we actually come with such confidence that it's 100% going to work?
I absolutely love our conversations because I don't know if you've noticed, but I've taken notes while you were speaking sometimes because it gave me inputs for my own speeches, for my own book, for my own things that I'm doing. I'm like, oh shit, I have to consider that. I haven't considered, like, I haven't looked at Bitcoin from that perspective. So I guess I have to look at that. So I guess I and love and hate it because I have to do more research now. But I kind of love doing that research and figuring things out. But it's yeah, I just wanted to note that because I absolutely love our conversations and I hope the people
know,
listening
same.
to that feel the same way.
Well, I use this sometimes as a sounding board. So when you reached out and said to come back on, I was like, okay, no, good time doing some research. I need to sort of start talking it through with someone else that isn't just in my circle around here to see whether I've landed the ideas in my head well enough. And so I've still got a bit of work to do. But and then I'm going to shill this. But for anyone that thinks that this was good conversation, I got a free Substack that I'm going to go back to because I'm going to write a book, but I need to practice my writing. I've realized my writing is really crap. And so I need to do some practice runs on some articles and some points and thoughts that I'm having. So if you want to hear more of it, I'll just be publishing a weekly Substack article now on various things that are coming out of the research.
Do you think that writing gets worse because of AI? Because we're so used to just like you can write a really bad phrase questions and just put a bunch of context and don't care about how you written it, but AI gets like what you kind of want to say and still spills out like useful answers and useful text and useful things, and we're using it to write emails, using it to write arguments, we're using it to do all those things that humanity kind of loses the ability to write themselves something nice.
Maybe look, my own journey with this book myself, I went hardcore into just AI as a research tool. I got my Gemini subscription. I got a specific uh, AI called Consensus and SciSpace, so they can tap into the 250 million academic research papers and draw from that, which the other AIs can't do because they don't have access to those journals. And so I use both of them. And what I found was um, I was so constrained on my thinking because AI is so simplistic. And that might change into the future and it might become more complex. But right now, it was answering the questions as I posed it. And because I didn't understand the subject matter material anywhere near enough, I didn't know what questions to ask. And AI is only as good as the questions that you ask it. So I actually, after 3 months of trying to do the research that way, pivoted and just started reading books. And what you realize is the books and the authors themselves give a much broader perspective and give you a deeper understanding into the subject matter that then allow you to be creative with that subject matter. I was a musician back in the day, and I'll tell you now, I wouldn't have been able to do the improv jazz on the sax had I not understood my scales and my music theory, because I wouldn't know how to be creative if I didn't know the fundamentals. And so I think what's going to happen is people are going to go down this AI piece, rely too much on it, realize they're getting too vanilla, getting too robotic. People will see through it. And it's just like, this is going to be the free market working again. We know what is AI slop. We will start passing through a whole bunch of stuff for credibility checks to see whether it was AI produced or whether it was human produced. And I think what will happen is you'll get a premium on human created content, but specifically things that are creative in nature. So not regurgitating what someone else has said, but rather something creative, a leap, or something that AI itself could not create because it didn't have that source material to draw from. Those unique things that our minds can create that AI can't. At the moment, that might change, but right now, that's sort of my view, will be what will be the premium. And so that will drive people to write. Because imagine, like right now, I pass quite a bit through these AI checkers to say, has this been written by AI? And so eventually, people that just do that, they're going to lose credibility. We're not going to be looking at them. What will gain credibility are those that can actually create unique content. And by nature of needing to create unique content, we will have to go back to understanding how to write or how to at least express ourselves to create unique things. So whether that's writing a book, whether that's talking on a podcast and it being transcribed into book format, it has to be human-led, human-created to draw that premium. Otherwise, it becomes a commodity, and we will not see value in the commodity. And by nature of not having as much value, because I can get it for a $30 subscription per month right now, or maybe into the future it becomes $5, or maybe in the future it becomes a freemium model where there's ads in there and it's all for free, which a lot of people are saying that could go down. We will crave and put greater value on unique human generated content, because that will be the unlock for value.
It's actually the reason why I stopped using. I use Claude usually, but why I stopped using Claude or any other AI tool for thinking about questions to ask. I realized that I just use AI. If I don't know the guest, I just use AI to figure out who this guest is. It's amazing at, which is like, oh yeah, like he talks usually about it, that and that and that. He works at that, he does that, like all of those things. He makes an overview, which is amazing, within like 1 minute, maybe 2 minutes. But then I think myself about, oh, what am I interested in hearing from him? What am I interested in, like, to hear? Like, I have so much data to know what I like and what people like because of the amount of podcasts I put out there and the amount of feedback I get from every single episode of like, hey, I loved that section. Hey, this was really powerful. Like, I just got from real people a lot of feedback to it. And what I found is I have better conversations because, first of all, I don't have a set of questions that are like, I want to go here, here, here. It's not like I'm not an interviewer who's like, oh, first question done, second question. Like, I don't think this is valuable whatsoever. And today, because I already know you, I haven't written down a single question. I've came completely blank in here and just like was like, let's see where it goes. And I've done that multiple times now. I've like actually like probably did past 200 episodes, except the people that I didn't know before. Because you have better conversations because you don't. It's less an interview and more a conversation, and people like two minds coming together and expanding wherever. So the only thing that I always ask,
and it's genuine.
and I also ask, and it's genuine. And I think it's already valuable now in this world because we have like this 20-second TikTok created with AI, like perfect to hack your attention span. And this is the exact opposite.
Yeah, which is awesome.
We're not hacking your attention span with our, I don't know, 1 hour, 30-minute conversation
We're
whatsoever.
stretching your ability to stay and concentrate throughout the entire thing.
And so I think this is already valuable now, but I think especially in like, I don't know, 10 years, 5 years or something like that, I think there will be a point where I switch to live stream only, because people will demand it. People want to see it right now, here, two human beings clashing onto each other and like having a conversation. I'm kind of thinking that that's what people want right now. It's like pre-recorded has a lot of benefits that live don't have, but I feel like in 5 years this podcast will be live stream only. But yeah, it's a crazy world. And so having real human interaction, real human connection will be the main advantage that you will have in this world.
I completely agree. Otherwise, we will lose our humanity. We are a social species. And anyone that thinks otherwise is, I think, misguided or doesn't understand our biology. And if we're a social species and we are glued to a screen, I think enough literature and research is coming out to say that what the social media age has done to kids has destroyed their social interactions with people, raised anxiety levels, and we're seeing that experiment play out. I think it's now incredibly well documented. You
And
see
it,
our community.
so
Yeah,
I
go for
just
it.
wanted to add on there, because I think there's something very important in there. Not only that this is happening with social media, those who specifically reach out and build their social skills, they are benefiting 10x more than how they would have benefited from it before social media. And I think the
Yep.
same is true with AI. The same is true. Like if you live in this world of like social media, AI, and all of those things, if you're specifically trying to think hard yourself, specifically, but still use it. Like if you don't use AI, I think like you're lagging. But like thinking harder yourself, using the social skills yourself, you're 10x more valuable, because it's a rare thing to have in your world,
Yep.
and scarcity is something valuable.
And you need to work towards the 1, 2, and 3%ers now. Where we used to develop skill sets that made up 40% of who we are, I'm an engineer, I'm a mathematician. AI in those knowledge-based industries is just reset the baseline. Because now something that took you 4 years plus a genetic aptitude to be able to do, like I did a physics degree, and not many people can do that. That is now going to go away with AI as the foundation. And so the 1, 2, and 3% above and beyond what AI can do will be the old 40, 50, 60% that your degree used to do. And so I think people will have to readjust to realize, actually, I only need to be 1 or 2% better, and I can get all the value that being 40% better today would be. I can charge that premium. And when they realize that, they're realizing, okay, yeah, it's these softer skills, it's these people-to-people interactions, it's this. I just need to tweak it a little bit with something unique that takes deep thought by self to come up with something unique. Even though it's small in its contribution, it will be the differentiator um, between the new AI baseline, which is going to be extremely high in terms of its competence. And so, yeah, focus in on those 1, 2%ers, social people type skills is going to be so significantly important.
What is one thing that is currently annoying you in the Bitcoin ecosystem that you would like to change?
I'll tell you now, Bitcoiners probably don't want to be Australian citizens at the moment, given all the tax changes that are about to occur down here. That's definitely been keeping me up a bit more at night, let me tell you.
What is coming to Australian tax changes?
It is significant, and actually there's some great individuals that will talk in a bit more detail to this, but at a high level will be the test case for new tax changes that will severely steal wealth from the population. So we're changing our capital gains tax. So in Australia, if you own an asset, you're subject to your marginal tax rate on any profits that you gain. So let's just say Bitcoin goes from $10 to $100. You made a $90 profit. You would get taxed at your marginal tax rate. And in Australia, the top tax rate is 45% plus 2% for our Medicare levy. So it's close to 47%. But then in the late 90s, the government introduced a 50% discount, which meant that if you held the asset for longer than 12 months, you could take a 50% discount on that taxable gain event. So instead of paying the 47%, you're paying sort of like 22.5% was the capital gains. So that's the system we've been operating in since the late 90s, early 2000s.
But that's only when you sell, right?
Only when you sell. So if you choose to sell.
So you are basically treating capital gains as income, like other countries would treat the income tax.
Yeah, correct. So it just gets that capital gain gets added to your income for the year, and then your tax rate is then applied across that total balance. So our top tax rate kicks in, I think, at about $190,000, and then anything above $190,000 is taxed at 45%. Every dollar, the government takes 45 above that amount. So the problem is if you're a full-time worker in Australia and earning a six-figure salary, 120, 130, 140, then effectively any major sale of Bitcoin is going to push you straight into that top marginal tax bracket, which gets you taxed at that 45%. Now, what the government is doing now is actually going to remove that 50% discount and actually just charge you the full tax rate and give you indexation based on inflation. So instead of the discount, they'll say, okay, you bought an asset in 2020 at $100. What's been the CPI? It's been 3%. All right, we'll adjust your purchase price for the amount of years that you've held it and the CPI increase. So that if that's 3% over 10 years, just basic math, 30%. So your $100 buy price is now $130. But if you sell it for $10,000 or you sell it for $5,000 or you sell it for $1,000, let's just say you 10x the investment. And in Bitcoin over a 10-year period from where it is now, a lot of us would say that's a more than likely scenario. Then you're going to be paying 45% on 870 of that gain at 45 to 47%. So now the government's almost taking half of the gains of you taking the risk of owning Bitcoin here. And so for someone like myself that had an exit path out of Bitcoin, not completely, but to exit myself out of the fiat system, so pay off the home loan so I'm not slave to the bank anymore, give myself some financial freedom to pursue the things that I want to pursue, that has now been effectively destroyed if this passes through legislation. So this is what the government are saying they're about to do. It goes to the parliament to get voted on, I think, in the next couple of months. And if it does, it takes effect the 1st of July, 2027. But if it does, it could add upward of 3 to 4 years of me having to hold even longer before I reach a sale price that exits me out of the fiat system. And so the government has effectively taxed us time as well as a huge sum of money.
Now, when I researched Bitcoin the first time, I came across Saylor saying things like you can't tax Bitcoin because it's the most it's the easiest asset that can flee out of a country. He brought up that example of a small Italian harbor where all the rich people came in. Then they tried to tax the rich people that were in the boats because the people thought it's unfair. The rich people all left the town, didn't have any money. They went broke, so they reduced the tax again. Then we have like many other examples of like you want to tax the real estate because it cannot leave the jurisdiction. It cannot leave Australia, USA, like wherever you are from. But you should not tax something that is easily transportable outside of the country, outside of the jurisdiction, because if you do that, it will just fly outside of the country and outside of the jurisdiction. And I feel like you probably also have done the calculation, like how much money you potentially could save to build your family just by not participating in that system and just like living somewhere else. And there are other beautiful places in the world. It's not just one country. And you said before we started recording that you also are big in history of economics. So I'm curious, what is your point of view on taxes and Bitcoin and the government? Kind of like, what is kind of that the tension field between an asset that you can't really like you can just like not have it, like you can just say, like, what is the tension field kind of for you looking?
So I say Bitcoin is in, call it cyberspace. So yes, it gives you that ability to just move wherever you want. It's completely decentralized. We all sort of know that story. But the problem is we're all physical in the real in the physical world, and we live, we've got families, we've got friends, we've got homes from which we build emotional connections to. And so you're sort of having to bring the two together. My personal view is I'm happy, funnily enough, to pay tax. I've got zero issues with that because I think that there's an element of societal cohesion where you should contribute to your broader community on certain things. So whether it's like a Milton Friedman view of the world, or a or a Thomas Sowell view of the world, which is just minimal government, defend the borders, protect property rights, ensure that there is police and emergency services. So that I think is like sort of like a minimum standard. And I actually go a bit beyond that for me personally, just based on my own value set. Knowing people and myself being a director on on a nonprofit board here in Australia, I know that there are those that are hit with life circumstances that sometimes a safety net is a good thing, not just for helping them out, but for social cohesion and to create a country with a set of values that you want to be a part of. So I'm quite happy to pay tax if I know that the government is using that tax money effectively to deliver against the promises it makes to the people. So with that out of the way, then it comes to, are they actually doing that? And the answer is absolutely not. So we can already see fraud, abuse, and waste of public funds. There's a scandal every other day, and it's so frequent now that it's almost become the norm. Everybody knows politicians warp the system in many ways, that money doesn't always go to the areas that it should. So in Australia, we've got a scheme called the National Disability Insurance Scheme. Full disclosure, I sit on the board of an organization that provides disability support services. So I get a unique view on that. I know that they do a lot of good, a significant amount of good. There are people that are getting a life that otherwise would not have, and a quality of life, I should say, that they otherwise would not have received. But I also know that the way in which the government has set up the system, that it has allowed for a significant amount of fraud and abuse of the system. And so there is millions of dollars going out the door by people that can undermine the system. So how government applies and uses those funds are what I think are in question. And right now, I have no real faith that the Australian government, for the extra taxes that they may get from my Bitcoin holdings, is going to yield any positive results for where I'm at. And so I'm almost at the point of saying, is this a time to opt out? But that comes with a heavy burden. You know, my wife's family is here, my family is here. I want to raise my kids here. But is that worth, how much is that worth to be here? And you sort of have to now weigh it up. Is it multiple six figures of tax in order to stay here, or move to another country where we don't have the same sort of support network, social network, and have to start from scratch? How much is that money actually worth? And so we're going through that debate at the moment. And to be honest, with this and with my view on Bitcoin, where it's going to land 2030, 2032, which was sort of my time horizon for making my first sale to get out of my fiat commitments, maybe.
I brought that up recently, actually, in a live stream. There are different I like Europe a lot, just as a livable place on planet Earth. It's a very beautiful place. You have the Nordic countries. You have the South countries with the beaches and all. Like, you have a very, like, if you know, Europe is a very beautiful place to live.
That it is.
And with the European Union, and I'm I'm not one that saves with things that I don't like about the European Union. There's a lot of things I really don't like on it. But one thing I really like about it, it's very easy if you're a European Union citizen to move within the European Union. So do just travel to another country. It's like you just pack your things and you go there. It's really not that bureaucratic. I already tried it out. I lived for 1.5 years in Germany. I worked there. It was super easy. You go to the Austrian bureaucracy and say, "Hey, no longer here. Please give me confirmation." Then you go to where you went. I went to Munich, to Germany. I went to the Munich office. I went there, said, "Hey, I'm now here. Please give me confirmation that I'm now here. That's my address." They're like, "Okay, you are now here." That's it. Like, it's super easy to move within
That
the
is very
European
cool.
Union. A little bit like it's easy to move within the United States of America. People forget that United States of America, it's not one country. It's like multiple countries into one country. So like
50
the
states.
states. And so I really like that setup because you have the option to like move not that far and still like have that competition also between each other, because we have Czech Republic which has a marginal tax rate of 23%. Austria goes up to 55%. Italy
Oh, damn.
47%. Great Britain 45%, Ireland 48%, but then the corporate tax rate, for example, in Ireland is like 12%, Austria 23%. So like there's all those different kind of tax rates, and they are competing with each other. And so I like that a lot. Like the living standard in a lot of European countries is similar, and the tax are different, which means there is competition between those countries to be the best place where talent can go. Where I wanted to go with that is do you think that this model of different countries competing for talents, competing for the best capital, the best companies, the best heads of the world will continue and actually spread out and get decentralized? Or is
100%.
that kind of China thing, like centralization, globalization, kind of coming on us?
Well, I don't know whether the view of China's centralization would be accurate in certain parts, right? Because they are the manufacturing hub, and I think they're what 30-40% of global manufacturing. And so yes, it is you can call it a superpower in that part. But the rhetoric when I'm listening to podcasts and hearing others talk on this is that we're shifting towards a multipolar world, whether that be no longer US homogeny, but rather you'll have the European part, you'll have China. I think India will be its own as well. You're now starting to see the rise of ASEAN countries, so the Southeast Asian countries now coming together and doing some interesting stuff. So I'm originally from Malaysia before my parents migrated to Australia. So that's part of that ASEAN group of Singapore, think Vietnam, Thailand, the Philippines, sort of that part of Southeast Asia will have its own appeal. And the reason why I said I don't think it'll necessarily be centralization per se towards China, I think that that's just what's above the surface. Um, I'm looking at Malaysia because I've still got a lot of family there. And I'm seeing from afar, a significant amount of investment. And if you look at their adoption in that region of AI, for example, it is significantly higher than what we're doing here in Australia. And you would think that as a Western democratic nation that is first world and enjoyed higher standards of living for as long as we have, that we would be on the front of that adoption curve. But in actual fact, we are so far behind the curve. And we've got, if anything, a hesitance toward AI and that particular type of adoption, whereas you don't see that from what I can see. Again, I don't live in those countries, but you just don't see that anywhere near as much amongst the Asian countries. So I think the things that keeping, for example, the European Union together and that ability to move between those countries will start to potentially break down as people realize, okay, I can see the ease of life. It's very similar to what I'm used to. It's comfortable. And yeah, this country's 23% tax, this one's 40% tax, etc. But what if you just went to Malaysia and you go to Labuan and you set up a company with 0% tax and zero capital gains tax? and you're in an Asian country that's been advancing their infrastructure so quickly and the standards of living have now increased significantly. You probably say the same thing about Vietnam. You could say the same thing about Thailand, who are offering better deals. I think that the rise of those nations will start to challenge the homogeny of other blocks, European Union being a bloc, and who knows what's going to happen across the African continent over the next 50 years. And so if you sort of zoom out and you say, well, what is the potential now that information flows so freely and countries are starting to advance much faster post World War II in a way that we haven't seen? I say the competition is going to increase. And so you'll find niches of things that might suit you better outside of what we're traditionally used to. And so, like, as an example, and the only reason why I raise that is that I'm considering Malaysia as an example as a potential plan B. We're so far from making that call, but Malaysia would be that bet for me, not going into Europe, not going to the US and certainly one of those states, because values-wise, it aligns better to me than anywhere else in the world.
And there are many forces that bring us there. If you think about remote work, if you think about the move from huge companies and corporations towards more corporations that are smaller, like startups with like 10, 15 people. Now with AI and automation, it's way easier to have a small, efficient company with, let's say, 5 to 50 people that has huge economic output than it was previously. Previously, you needed like 100, 200, 500, maybe thousands of people to have the same economic output that you now have with 50 to 100 people. And so that is something which makes individual life more movable. And have you remote work, Bitcoin is a huge factor, just like money that doesn't really fit into jurisdictional thinking because you can just take it with you. Cash is hard to take with you. A bank account is impossible. They will always know that. It's literally their property almost. Gold, very hard with like border controls and all of that. So like Bitcoin is the only asset that I take serious that you can do those things with. And so that's like we're moving very fast in that direction, I feel like.
We're moving very fast. I'm not quite on. Well, and again, it comes from the fact that I'm an Australian citizen, and so my ability to be portable with my money, I'm not in a jurisdiction where that risk is anywhere near as high as if I was coming out of an African continent or maybe one of the Southeast Asian countries. And so right now, I think over the next 5 years, my portability is actually quite good, even with the Australian dollar as its foundation. Sure, I'll pay exit taxes, but they're not going to stop me per se. They'll just say what we call in Australia as deemed disposal. If I stop being a tax resident, the government assumes that I've sold everything. I pay the capital gains tax. I say, thank you very much. Here's my dues, and off you go. And then I can go and do whatever I want at the moment. But to the point of that may not always be the case. So over the next 5, 10 years, I don't see that shifting so substantially that it would become prohibitive. I think the taxes will make it prohibitive. So there'll be a commercial cost to doing that. But the problem that I've got here is that because I used fiat to buy the Bitcoin through a registered exchange here in Australia that came from my Australian bank account where my fiat was held, my tax office already knows that I've got it because they knows that it went to the exchange. The exchange has got the records. They are compliant against Australian laws and regulations. And so they know what I've got. And so if I flee with my Bitcoin to try and not pay the tax, then effectively what I'm saying is I don't intend to return to this country at all. And I absolutely want to return to this country if I ever made the decision to leave. And so you sort of have to still play within the rules per se. But sort of bringing that back to where it started, which was, yes, Bitcoin is great. I think absolutely. I wouldn't be a Bitcoiner if I wasn't, but I'm not as big of a doomer in the short to medium term, I'll call it. The next 5 to 10 years, I still think that if you're in a Western democratic country, European democratic country, they will maintain, even if we think it's an illusion, they'll maintain that illusion for quite a bit longer, because the moment that they remove that illusion, the whole system breaks down.
What do you mean with like you're not as much as a doomer? You think there is like I hear out from that you hear from other Bitcoiners that are more catastrophic, or like they're more doomers when it comes to national politics and all of that. What do you mean with that?
So mine is more, sometimes the words that we use, we understand them, but how they can be perceived by other people can be very different. And if I sort of take a step back, and I sometimes hear my wife in my ear when she's listening to something as not a hardcore Bitcoiner, but obviously by association with me, she is, will hear the rhetoric that, Bitcoin, freedom money, fiat, it's like shackles, it's going to lock you down. They can print it to oblivion, they can tax it to oblivion, they know exactly where you are, what you can do with it. They can withhold your money. If it's a fiat in a bank account, it's not really yours. Like when you hear that kind of sentiment, and there are pockets of the Bitcoin community that will talk to that, there is absolute truth to that. Absolutely, I don't disagree with that. But my balanced view on it is that may be true, but the system only survives because they allow, even if it is an illusion, that people have control over their money, that they believe that it's their money, that they can use the money how they wish, that they are able to take it across borders, even if it does cost money. And in Australia, I can transfer my money across borders relatively easily. It may take some time, and so Bitcoin solves that. I can do it in a couple of minutes on chain versus a couple of days if I was to use the traditional legacy banking system. And it's going to cost me a hell of a lot less to transfer Bitcoin across. So I'd rather transfer the value as Bitcoin rather than as fiat. But I can still do it with fiat at a cost. And so I always say, it's like, okay, well, if that's the case, then yes, it's a more convenient, it's a more apt technology for the world that we live in. Bitcoin is just superior in every single way, shape, or form. But I'm not so negative against the use of fiat in the way the world currently works, because it is built on that. And to live in this world, I can't 100% here in Australia live on a Bitcoin standard. There are certain things in the way that I live my life, with a mortgage, with bills to pay, going to the supermarket, etc., where I still need the fiat because we still live in that world. And so I'm not 100%. I'm a bit more balanced, I'll call it, and I can make both systems work for me as it stands today.
I love that, because one of my best friends in Bitcoin, Daniel, with whom I founded the Microseed company, I've talked with him, and he holds the belief that Bitcoin is not money and Bitcoin can never be money. And he's a hardcore Bitcoiner, self-custody. Like he's like as much a Bitcoiner as any I know from anyone else. So that's why it's so confusing. And now you're saying that kind of thing of like, fiat might not go away, or like it's not as bad as like sometimes we make it sound. And I had people in the beginning of the podcast coming up and saying like, oh yeah, fiat has like 3 years left.
Yeah.
Like this podcast episode is now almost 3 years like old. So
Yeah.
according to that, we have like a few months left. So I don't think so. And we always piss very hard on fiat, and I think there's something very evil on the system what fiat is. But we also have to remind ourselves that we've built a lot of great things while fiat was around. Now we can say, was it because of fiat, or was it despite of fiat? Which is like an interesting frame. Like we've built so many amazing things, and we've been like, our society benefited greatly from technology and advancement the last 10 years, the last 100 years, the last hundreds of years. So now it's the question of like, will Bitcoin ever be money and completely replace that fiat thing? Ever? And B, which is like, I think like a very hard question to answer. I don't know if we can even do that, but like just as to put it in here. And the B one is like, all the things that we have built, is that because of fiat, despite of fiat, or was fiat even like, was there positive? Is there, maybe other question, is there a positive side to fiat?
I always look, and so I don't get, fiat is a tool. Bitcoin is a tool. it is not the be all or and end all that Bitcoin is the thing. Bitcoin is a means to an end. Bitcoin is a tool that allows us to exchange value so that we can do productive things as a species on this planet. We don't own Bitcoin for the sake of Bitcoin. Like, I don't care that I've got X number of sats in my wallet. I care what that X number of sats in my wallet allows me to do with the most precious resource that we all have, which is our time on this earth. And that is the true limitation. And so, again, it's just a tool. Money has been used throughout civilization as a means to speed up commerce, trade, and productive human cooperation. And I think the part that's often missed is humans have to cooperate and have to trust. And without cooperation and trust, we would not have become the apex species on this planet, because we are not stronger, faster than a lot of the main predators in the animal kingdom. It's our ability to use our now evolved frontal cortex in order to fashion tools and create communities and colonies that have been able to apply that cognitive intelligence to our environment, to shape the environment to better suit us rather than us shaping ourselves to the environment. And so it's this cognitive revolution, but that required trust. And so this is sort of a good segue towards some of the stuff that I do, and the book that I'm now researching and writing. But it looks at what our species is fundamentally from an evolutionary perspective, what has made us successful through that period of time. And what you realize is that we as humans, or Homo sapiens, create fictions. We create shared realities that allows us to cooperate and trust each other on a scale that no other animal species on this planet has been able to achieve. And so, again, money in this case is just a tool that has helped accelerate our ability to do that cooperation cross borders, and not within the couple of hundred people communities that we used to be in, but now to the couple of millions, if not billions, of people cooperating globally to get to an outcome. And so fiat absolutely helped with that to a degree. And I will always say that a tool is a tool. It's how the tool is used that becomes the issue. And I would say that if you thought that everyone was a good moral actor acting in the interest of how the tool was intended, fiat could be an incredible monetary tool. The problem is we don't always act in the best interests of the collective. We act in our best interests of ourselves. And so there are always going to be the few that ruin it for the many. And what we see within the fiat system is that playing out. There weren't enough controls around the few that could pervert the system, even though the many have acted in good faith within that system in how it was designed to be used. So it comes back to human behavior.
I want to be aware of your time there in Melbourne. I think it
Oh,
gets
it's
to
almost
be
11.
it gets to be late. So thank you so much for staying up with
All
me
good.
late and celebrating Bitcoin, I guess, and talking about what is this. We have an end routine, as you might remember from the previous. Oh gosh, you're already the third time on, I think. Previous
Yep.
times where the previous guest is asking a question for the next guest without knowing who the next guest actually is. And the previous guest asked you the question, if money is no issue, would you do anything different in your life right now?
100% I would. Now that I've got a kid, I'd spend a hell of a lot more time with him and my wife doing the things that will see joy in his life. So that's a starting point. But I would go beyond that 100% into my research. Like, I would not be working my 9 to 5 job in order to pay the bills and trying to fit in the research time morning and afternoon to write the book. I would just be all in on that. I think one of the things that Bitcoin has provided clarity, but also having a kid, is that you get a sense for what brings meaning and fulfillment and purpose to your life, because you're now building for the next generation. You want to leave behind a legacy in a way that's more meaningful meaningful now than when I didn't have a child. And I will absolutely say that I would put all my effort into that. And I know in my heart of hearts that the research that I'm doing now into Bitcoin is that thing. Like I wake up in the morning, I want to do it. After work, I want to do it. And I fit my child in and I struggle to get sleep. But because of that drive, I know that that's the thing that I would 100% do. So yeah, to that question, if that wasn't the case, I'd be 9 to 5, reading a book, doing my research, writing the book, but then applying it into the real world and creating a business around it.
I hear that from many parents that they don't sleep that much.
Only in the early years. I will say that when he was first born, I think it was waking up every hour and a half to 2 hours, and you're barely stringing 4 to 5 hours of sleep a night. Now we get pretty much the entire night. He's 15 months old, so he's already in bed right now. He won't wake up till 7. So straight after this, I'm literally going to bed so I can wake up refreshed, so I can continue on the reading of the next novel that on the next book that's gonna contribute to my book. So yeah.
That's awesome. Then I will let you go to sleep.
Yep.
And maybe some of the listeners also listen to that in the night. So I guess a good night today. But before I let you go, where can people find you, ask you questions, and reach out to you?
You can go on to X. My handle is Arvsnotes, ARVSNOTES. And then the other one is I'm about to start my writing phase for the book. But as a preview, if you want to join the journey, get a sense of some of the thinking behind the thoughts of evolutionary biology, how technology is interacting with that, and how Bitcoin is the solution to it, go to my Substack, free of charge. I won't charge for it, but it's a good outlet for me, and you can follow the journey. And that is the Bitcoin Curve at Substack.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Arv. Good night, Arv, and also good night to all my listeners out there. Thank you so much for listening in. As always, I'll be back. This content is for educational and entertainment purposes only and does not constitute financial advice.